This 150th class was a little different. There were only 24 students, which is much less than usual.
Hi friends, thanks for tuning in to my recap of December's JW broadcasting. Wow, is all I can say. I just find it amazing what is uncovered when you remove so much of the nonsense that these guys discuss on these broadcasts. I don't really even know what to say about what I'm about to show you. But let's get into it, friends. These elite missionary Jehovah's Witness Gilead graduates are sent out to strengthen the congregation. That's what their job is. Their job is not to give the message of salvation to people, which is what people who are in a lost world need to hear, friends. Their goal is to strengthen the congregation. So basically, this month's broadcast highlights a roster of speakers and a handful of little testimonials of former Gilead graduates, most of which I edited out because really, for the sake of time, they were irrelevant, except for the very last one, which is very interesting. So of course you can watch the entire program on their website if you would like to. These speakers tell the missionaries the truth about who they truly are and how the governing body truly feels about them. You just have to listen. All right, so we're gonna get into it. Tony Morris is the chairman, and watch what he says about former Watchtower president Fred Franz and how Fred Franz truly knew his Bible, especially Ecclesiastes 5, but he deliberately deceives his audience. Take a look.
I remember an outstanding talk. I'd heard Brother Fred Franz the summer before at the Yankee Stadium convention, but we were a little closer there in the assembly hall. And I'll tell you what, I was just glued to him. If you had the privilege to hear him, Jehovah bless, he had a blessed, beautiful mind. He could just quote these scriptures. But he discussed Ecclesiastes 5. That's why I was thinking of bringing it up for your class here, because this is really directed to you. And he spoke there about vows. In those first 7 verses, dreams are mentioned. And I appreciate it because it just struck me when he mentioned it. The dreams don't refer to dreams one has while they're sleeping because of a busy day. Now, you can't get that on your own. Just reading Ecclesiastes with whatever version you had. It had to do with getting sidetracked with personal pursuits. These dreams, these are the things they're doing. And that would be vanity. And Brother Franz addressed it. And for example, verse 1, watch your step. So this is for, here you are soon to be graduates. Jehovah's saying, watch your step. Don't stop doing that. You have thus far, so continue to watch your step. And he mentions those morally stupid ones. That's not you. You're going to avoid that. And then I love this in verse 2. Do not be quick with your mouth. Boy, there's a lot of people in the world could benefit from that counsel. Isn't that true? It's like, does he or she ever shut up? I mean, I bet you they talk in their sleep. They just won't shut up, you know? But anyway, don't be quick with your mouth, particularly in context here when you're speaking to Jehovah. Well, boy, that's some good things. That's you brothers that will speak in public, but you sisters too, when it's personal with your prayers to Jehovah. Don't be quick with your mouth when you approach the sovereign of the universe. Your words should be few. You do not impress God with vocabulary. He's impressed with sincerity of heart. And when you're praying to Jehovah, sometimes we don't want to be counseling, criticizing prayers. We try to be careful with that, but sometimes you even hear a prayer at Bethel, it's like, okay, we're trying to eat breakfast here. And I've told folks, it's like, I just can't help it. Jesus is there, most eloquent person to walk the planet. And the meal comes, he raised his eyes to heaven and gave thanks. Amen. Let's eat. Amen. Let's eat, I mean, there are other times you want to pour out your heart and all that, but you're not praying to the audience. You're talking to the sovereign of the universe. The counsel is, now I'm a Gilead graduate, your brothers particularly, I'm going to have longer prayers. I hope not. I sure hope not, unless they're private.
Friends, are Gilead graduates giving the sacrifice of fools in the house of the Lord? Why did Tony share this verse in Ecclesiastes 5, which is about showing reverence in the presence of a holy God? When you speak, when you pray, know who you're praying to. It's not about saying a few words before a meal because you're hungry. All right, so listen, Mark Sanderson is next. He talks about Paul. The Apostle Paul, friends, had an encounter with the risen Christ on the road to Damascus. He was a minister of Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ, that you're saved by grace through faith. It's not of works, lest any man should boast. He served Christ as the apostle to the Gentiles. Paul was not a Jehovah's Witness. Mark relates and compares the persecution that Paul received while serving Jesus Christ to the Gilead graduates who are going out in the field, as if they're going to experience the same persecution. But Paul served Christ. These missionaries serve an organization. And how do we know that they serve an organization? Because Mark Sanderson tells them. Check it out.
And just remind ourselves of some of the things Paul went through. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 23, Paul says, "Are they ministers of Christ? I reply like a man, I am more outstandingly one. I have done more work, been imprisoned more often, suffered countless beatings, and experienced many near deaths. 5 times I received 40 strokes, less one from the Jews. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I experienced shipwreck. A night and a day I have spent in the open sea." And the list just goes on. Well, very soon you're going to be graduates, and your mandate is to go forth and strengthen and stabilize the field and branch territory. It's people. It's people. Spiritual men and women who want to learn, who want to be trained, who want to reach the spiritual goals that they've set for themselves. So here's the question that rests before you. What will you teach others by your example? Never allow yourself to be a cold executive.
Don't be like a cold executive. Now, when has a missionary ever been referred to as an executive? Executives work for corporations, friends. So anyway, Clyde Martin, helper to the writing committee, is next, giving an unbelievable comparison to famous deceivers in ancient times. Check it out.
Have you ever had to sue for peace? While you're thinking of the question, would you please turn with me to Luke chapter 14? I'd like to put you and me in the middle of one of Jesus' illustrations. This is where we come in. What king marching out against another king in war does not first sit down and take counsel whether he's able with 10,000 troops to stand up to the one who comes against him with 20,000? If in fact he cannot do so, then while that one is yet far away, he sends out a body of ambassadors and sues for peace. Now, with that in mind, Jesus gives the application. Verse 33, "In the same way, you may be sure that not one of you who does not say goodbye to all his belongings can be my disciple." That is you and me. we got to the point where we realized we did not want to be an enemy of Jehovah. And so we were willing to sacrifice everything, belongings, career, status, everything, for the privilege of being at peace with Jehovah and a disciple of his Son. Now, for you students of Class 150, your pursuit of peace with Jehovah has led you into the special full-time service. And what a beautiful record every one of you has set.
Did you hear that, friends? The desire of these Jehovah's Witnesses to be at peace with their God led them into the full-time service. Peace with their God requires a commitment. It requires full-time work, friends. But that's not all. He now says they remind him of a group in the Bible who literally sued for peace. This is so wicked and unbelievable. He starts to read from Joshua chapter 9, verse 6. But the only way to get the context of the story is to start reading from verse 1. But he doesn't do that. These people, the Gibeonites, had heard that Joshua had destroyed Jericho. The walls of Jericho fell down, and Ai, and they knew that they were next. They knew that there was a command for them to be destroyed because they served false gods, Baal. They were among the people who sacrificed their babies on the altar of Baal. They believed in child sacrifice, and that's not acceptable to a holy God. So Joshua was commanded to destroy them. So they completely deceived Joshua in order to save themselves, and in the end they were saved because of grace, but Joshua put a curse on them. So what happened was they deceived Joshua, and the princes of Israel, rather than praying about it, rather than asking God for direction, they make an oath with them. An oath that could not be broken. So their lives were spared, but in verse 23, Joshua curses them to be slaves forever to Israel. So now listen to what this deceiver says as he starts in verse 6.
You remind me in many ways of a group in the Bible that literally sued for peace. Now, their story is told in the book of Joshua, chapter 9. That's right, we're talking about the Gibeonites. Now, they had heard of all the things that Jehovah had done for his people Israel and to his enemies. They did not want to be Jehovah's enemy. And so they did exactly what the King and Jesus illustration did. They sent a body of ambassadors. So Joshua chapter 9, and this is their opening overture in verse 6. We have come from a distant land. Now make a covenant with us. When they didn't get a very warm initial reception, they persisted. Verse 8, we are your servants. In other words, set the terms. We want peace. They were willing to sacrifice everything in order to enjoy peace with Israel and with Israel's God. Now, Joshua and the chieftains didn't see it exactly the same way, particularly when they found out that they were not from a distant land, as they had claimed. Nobody likes to be fooled. So the tone got a little sterner. So look at verse 23. This is what they said. From now on, you are cursed, and you will always occupy a slave's position as gatherers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. What will the Gibeonites say to that? 25. We are at your mercy. Do to us whatever you think is good and right. And just so, the terms of peace were set. Verse 27. That day Joshua made them gatherers of wood and drawers of water for the assembly and for Jehovah's altar at the place that he should choose, and they remain so to this day. What do you think of the Gibeonites' assignment? It was presented to them as a punishment. But just think, they weren't being sold off as household slaves. their humble service would directly contribute to pure worship and support Jehovah's people. That's a privilege, isn't it? I mean, that's the kind of service we reach out for as a privilege.
These Gilead graduates are likened to these deceivers who were cursed. They were cursed. They were under a curse and therefore became slaves. Is this completely unbelievable? You see, these Gilead graduates are serving a false god. The God of the Watchtower is a false god who has happened to take the same name as the God of the Bible, the true God, who the King James calls Jehovah. But the Jehovah of the Bible is different than the Jehovah of the Watchtower. The Jehovah of the Watchtower has missionaries who are likened to people under a curse. And they're telling them this. But they're in such la-la land that either they don't have the time or they don't care to be like the Bereans to fact check what these deceivers are saying to them. They're false prophets. And false prophets, we know from Deuteronomy 18, wield their power through fear. This is not a mistake on the behalf of the governing body and these helpers. This is by design.
Was it because they were lowly people, no skills to do anything else, that they were given this kind of job? Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities. It was greater than Ai, and all its men were warriors. Clearly, the Gibeonites realized that if their army was no match for Israel, then Jehovah didn't need them to bolster his army in order to complete the conquest. It was better for them to ask Jehovah what he wanted them to do, and to do that. So the sacrifice was definitely worth it. Peace with Jehovah is such a treasure. We're willing to sacrifice anything to enjoy it. Jehovah's terms for us include humble service on behalf of pure worship and in support of his people. And that kind of humble service we view as the greatest privilege. We cherish our assignment. We're going to stay in it as long as Jehovah allows.
All right, now we move on to Mr. Malenfant, whose name in French means bad child. This talk is just too much. It's beyond belief.
And athletes. You know, athletes are prideful, many of them. And they boast about the events that they've been great in, they've won. In fact, you know, it's interesting to note that in the highly competitive sports world, there is an expression for great achievers. The expression is GOAT. G-O-A-T. Greatest of all time. Can you imagine people thinking that somehow they have been the greatest of all time?
Do you have an idea of where this is going? You know, the devil is referred to as the goat, the Baphomet. Have you ever seen the Baphomet? Part goat, part human. It's an androgynous being, that's Satan. I find it amazing that the sports world refers to their greatest player of all time as the goat. So you have even the most spiritually minded men who love sports. They love their sports idols. They're worshiping this greatest of all time, the goat. They're worshiping the goat, Satan. He is so wily and such a deceiver, friends, disguising himself as an angel of light. Just another way for Satan to bring attention to himself, worship to himself as men worship the goat, the greatest of all time. So anyway, Malenfant, the bad child, says that he can think of only one person who comes to mind when thinking of the greatest of all time, the goat.
When we hear the words greatest of all time, only one person comes to mind. He was the greatest man who ever lived, truly the greatest of all time, Jesus Christ. And his greatness had nothing to do with politics, business, or playing games. But it had everything to do with praising Jehovah and boasting in Jehovah God.
So he next tells them to appreciate the freedom they have because he says, you know the truth, right? They've been telling these Gilead graduates the truth about who they are and who they serve, the goat. They're the deceivers, just like the Gibeonites. You've been set free from the lies that hold people in bondage about false beliefs and life and death. They most certainly know the truth about false belief, friends. They're under a curse of the only true God, just as were the Gibeonites.
Appreciate the freedom you have right now because you know the truth. You've been set free from the lies of this world that hold people in bondage about false beliefs in life and death. You can boast also in another thing, that you're slaves of Jehovah. Now, you're in a unique position because very few slaves are allowed to choose their master. But you've done it. You've chosen Jehovah God to be your master and to be a slave to him.
Did you hear what he said? You've chosen Jehovah and to be a slave to him. Friends, they've told them the truth about who they are. They're the Gibeonites, the deceivers under the curse from the true God. They are cursed under the principles of a holy God, friends. They've told them the truth, and yet they still choose Jehovah. They serve the goat, the greatest of all time. They hide the truth in plain sight so that these people willingly serve this false god. You should have known. We told you. Didn't we tell you? Remember the Gilead graduation where we told you that you were just like the deceivers under a curse, the Gibeonites? Why didn't you know?
You're happy and you're willing slaves of Jehovah and of Jesus Christ. And it's a remarkable slavery, really, because no one has the freedom that we enjoy in our slavery to Jehovah God. We're so free and able to do so many things. And you can boast over the fact that Jehovah has allowed you a very special privilege. You can see the unseen. Not all people can do that.
Strain, stress, anxiety for all people at all levels. And the Bible tells us that these pressures are likely to increase in the near future. You're surrounded by men who hate you. In addition to hunting you down with a view to taking your life, they've spread slander and lies about you everywhere. Your name has become a reproach. When people see you coming, they turn and run the other way because they feel that your time is short and they don't want to be caught in the crosshairs. Wherever you look, it seems like terror is waiting for you. And as a result of these problems, you're struggling with depression. Your own sins are staring you in the face. The whole experience has taken a toll on your health. You can't sleep, your stamina is shot, your body is wasting away. Now, that was David's situation. The key to not just surviving, but thriving under extreme pressure is to have the internal pressure equal to the external. And when this is true, there is no amount of pressure that can crush you.
Now there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel of Asher's tribe. This woman was well along in years and had lived with her husband for 7 years after they were married. And she was a widow, now 84 years old. She was never missing from the temple, rendering sacred service day and night, with fasting and supplications. Well, here we have it. Everything we know about Anna is right here. Luke recorded it.
All right, so Mark fails to acknowledge the fact that the only reason Anna is mentioned is because she gave thanks for the Christ child. But Mark is going to take it further and just go down this rabbit trail of nonsense and complete speculation.
Likely she hadn't lived long enough to become a follower of Jesus. Likely she hadn't lived long enough to become a follower of Jesus. That's it. If we stop right there. But what if we don't? What if we dig deeper? What will we learn that will help you? Roman forces under the leadership of a soldier named Pompey came to restore order, and in the process, some 12,000 Jews reportedly died. It is possible that Anna's husband was one of these victims. It is possible that Anna's husband was one of these victims. What will Anna do? She could have been stumbled. She could have reasoned. I supported true worship all my life. I believed the Messiah would come and the prophecies would come. But things have only gotten worse. God lets my husband die. An Edomite is rebuilding the temple. What's happening? Anna could have given up, walked away, became bitter. But she didn't. Why? Why? It was the roots of her loyal love. That sustaining power of loyal love, it went deep and it wrapped around Jehovah. Chapter 2 and verse 38, it reveals that Anna was present when the baby Jesus was brought to the temple. And when she saw that baby, what did she begin to do in verse 38? It says she came near, she began giving thanks to God, speaking about the child to all who were waiting for Jerusalem's deliverance. Perhaps even holding that little baby, the future Messiah. This was something that this elderly woman had never expected in her lifetime. You cling to him, he holds on to you.
So we're almost done, friends. I left in this final testimony of former Gilead graduates because I found it very interesting.
When we hand out assignments to all of these students.
The morning we knew that we were going to get our assignment, we went down to morning worship, and then we had to line up and we were waiting to get our assignment, and my stomach was churning and I felt really sick with excitement, as well as the fact that you knew that whatever Brother Jairus said, the next sentence that came out of his mouth would determine the rest of your life. One example that comes to mind is a lecture we had that highlighted Romans chapter 15 and verse 3. Talked about how even the Christ did not please himself. So I was thinking to myself, can I really do this? But then I reflected back on that lecture, Romans 15:3, the Christ didn't please himself. Reflecting on that helped me to see myself in that big picture and realize, no, if Jesus could do that, then this is what I have to do first. I put the brothers and sisters first, and we thoroughly enjoyed being in that circuit.
So no wonder why she was sick to her stomach. Ted Jarrett's former governing body member was a dictator. He was mean-spirited, and he was surrounded by scandal. He was responsible for the two-witness rules, rule, especially when it comes to judicial committees where there is CSA involved. Now, let me ask you, friends, when is there ever going to be a witness when a child particularly is being abused, friends? Ted Jarrett's is responsible for this, and he is mentioned in a lawsuit on this particular topic. Fact check me, friends, do your own research. And he has since passed away, and of course he is mentioned as saying that he went to his reward. Wonder what that was. That's about it. The rest of their testimony was just pumping up the Gilead graduates and just, talking about their life of slavery to this fake religion who has a fake God with fake promises, but very real punishment, mind control, thought reform. Lately I've tried searching for people from my past. I've just been wanting to connect with people from my past. I've had that desire, and people have come to mind, and I've searched for them, and either I can't find them, or if I do find them, they're still in the organization. And it's just heart-wrenching that everybody from my past is still in the organization that I can think of, except, of course, the producer of that amazing Vice TV documentary. His name is Aaron Kaufman. I used to babysit him. I know he's working on something else that will be coming out in the future, but I just pray for those people that I think of and I can't find. Prayer works, friends, and I just wanted to encourage you because, listen, we conquered evil. We got out of this evil organization. Could you imagine being, for instance, a Gilead graduate, a spouse, and being on the foreign field and being PMO, waking up and feeling trapped? I just thank God that I woke up, and I commend you, friends, for having the strength to get out. But listen, you can no longer give Watchtower power over you. You must replace those lies that held us in a state of fear and defeat. And this is why I wrote my book, 30 Days of Truth, that will renew your mind from a God who is love, because there's so many truths about who we are and how God feels about us. And we need to replace those lies with the truth, friends, so that we can live a life of victory. And you can look down in the description box for the link as to how to get this. But thank you, friends, for watching. Turn to Christ. He offers truth, salvation. Put your faith and truth in the one who died for you. Put your faith and trust in the one who died for you, friends. I appreciate so much you watching. Have a great day.